Yes, I am very thankful to Engineer Sunita Kotwal and Dr. Professor Manjit Bansal and Dr. Sukhdeep Singh, Engineer Sukhdeep Singh, for giving me this opportunity to speak to the participant in this in the in this short-term program. Uh, there's a problem with my video, so I will just I will be with the audio itself. And can you make me can you make me enable to share the screen, because I am not able to share the screen.
So just a minute, we are taking the... So you can share your screen now.
Okay, thank you. Uh, can you see the screen?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
It's visible. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you, to speak to you in this short-term program. The topic of my presentation today is the climate change and energy security issues and challenges for India. Is moving? The slides are moving.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So, you know, the energy is the golden thread that connects economic growth, increased social equity, and an environment that allows the world to thrive. That was said to Ban Ki-moon, the UN chief, earlier. If we talk about the energy access to all, you know, today nearly 1 in 5 on this planet lacks access to electricity as per the World Bank data. Nearly 12% of world population does not have access to electricity, and for India it is 16%. There are almost 3 billion people, 300 crores rely on the wood, coal, charcoal, or animal waste for cooking and heating world over. Out of around 7 billion people, 3 billion people, they cook their meal on wood, coal, or charcoal. And this is a major barrier to eradicate the poverty and building shared prosperity. If you see, dear participant, if you see in the last 60 years, in the last 60 years ago, the total economy of the world was $1 trillion. Now today, the world economy is around $80 trillion. But this growth, this prosperity is not equally shared among us all. And in this the climate change point of view, where modern energy services are plentiful available, the problem is that the waste and pollution with the energy and anthropogenic emissions are contributing to climate change. And this has impacts on the lives of the communities, infrastructure, institutions, and budgets. And climate change impacts poor the first. If you see the total anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions, they have continued to increase over 1970 to 2010. If you see the highest in the human history from 2002 to 2010. And CO2 emissions from fossil fuel combustion and industrial processes contributed about 78% of the total greenhouse gas emissions increase from 1970 to 2010, and about half of cumulative anthropogenic CO2 emissions between 1750 and 2010 have occurred in the last 40 years. In baseline scenarios, direct CO2 emissions from the energy supply sector are projected to triple by 2050 as compared to 2010, unless energy intensity improvements are accelerated. If you see this, I will not go in detail this energy valence model. If you calculate from this energy valence model, the earth temperature comes around minus 18 degrees Celsius. What the average temperature of the earth is 15 degrees Celsius, but because of the greenhouse gases, if you see T is coming minus 18 degrees Celsius, the average temperature would be minus 18, but it is average temperature of the globe is 15 degrees Celsius. Something like 150 years ago, it was 14 degrees Celsius. Now, if you see these indicators of the human influence on the atmosphere during this industrial era, which started from 1850 to till today, if you see this, the CO2 historical emissions in or CO2 historical concentration in the atmosphere in 1000th century, in this basically 10th century, almost 1000 years ago, the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere was 280 parts per million, and the relative forcing due to the CO2 in the atmosphere was around 1.5 watt per meter square. And if you see this nitrous oxide concentration, historical nitrous oxide concentration, if you see in 10th century, these were around 270 part per billion, and they have increased so much in 2010 that they were more than 310 parts per billion. And if you see the relative forcing, why this nitrous oxide is contributed by 0.15 watt per meter square. And if you see the CH4 emissions also, if you see the historical concentration of CH4 methane in the atmosphere, they were 750 part per billion, and for the hundreds of years, thousands of years, from 10th century, 12th century to 14th century, they were static. There was no change up to 18th century. But after the 18th century, there was invention of Carnot engine, and there was a basically industrialization world over. Then CH4 concentration start increasing, and they are contributing for the global warming around 0.5 watt per meter square is the relative forcing. And if you see the sulfate aerosols deposited in the Greenland ice, they are also a part of the industrial activity. Now, if you see this slide, characteristic time scales in the Earth system to understand the climatic behavior, the climate change. There is parameters: atmospheric composition, climate system, ecological system, and socio-economic system. If you study this atmospheric composition, then we see the mixing of greenhouse gases which are emitted today in the atmosphere. In global atmosphere, they take 2 to 4 years. Means the CO2, CH4, methane be emitted into the atmosphere, they take 2 to 4 years to circulate in the atmosphere globally. And time for 50% of the CO2 pulse to disappear, because CO2, once CO2 is emitted into the atmosphere, they can also be absorbed by the plants, by the vegetation, by the grasslands, and by the oceans. But they take 50% of the CO2 pulse to disappear, 50 to 200 years. So not immediately this all CO2 be emitted into the atmosphere can be absorbed by the atmospheric systems or vegetative systems. And time for 50% of CH4 pulse to disappear take 8 to 12 years. So long time. Now, if you see the climatic system cannot change easily because this have a lot of inertia, but of course, because of anthropogenic emissions, so much emissions we are emitting into the atmosphere, the air temperature is changing. But air temperature to respond to the CO2 rise may take 100 years to 150 years, because from 1850, when Carnot engine was invented, or when this industrial revolution started, we are contributing more CO2 into the atmosphere by utilizing the fossil fuels, and transport of heat and CO2 to the deep ocean will take 100 to 200 years, and up to 10,000 years sea level to respond to temperature change. Even if this is change, we emit a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere, but sea level to respond to temperature change will take up to 10,000 years. And ice cap to respond to climate change, to temperature change may also take a longer time, several hundred decades. And if you see the ecological system, acclimation of plants to high CO2, how this, the plants will, they get the, they will be acclimatized to the CO2, uh, increase in CO2 in the atmosphere. It may take 1 to 100 years, and generally the plant life is, you can take on this scale 1,000 years. Like for a people tree, burger tree, this life is more than 500 years, and decay of plant material takes half year to 500 years. But if you see socio-economic system, like human life and our behavior in the society, change in energy and use technologies, if you see, they take 1 to 10 years, because within 10 years the technology changes. If you see the 10 years ago, the energy consumption by the air conditioners, and you see the energy consumption by the air conditioners today, 10 years ago, and then middle, the 5-star rating, now we are having a inverter rating, the air conditioner. So we can, basically they are becoming more energy efficient. So change in energy and use technology also is there in 1 to 10 years, and change energy supply technologies 10 to 50 years, and infrastructure also changes from 30 to 100 years, and social norms and governance and policies also, they are changed in 30 to 100 years. So if you see this, now if you see these extreme events world over, frostbite inducing cold in America, and severe heat in Australia, and heavy snowfall also in the Alps and in the Himalayas in 2019, as unusually extreme January events. Uh, and if you see this, the climate, basically the climate related problems, US cold blast killed 21 people in that year, and hottest January in Australia. And we witnessed in Australia, we witnessed the huge, the fire in the Australia. There were too much of loss to the uh, hello. अच्छा पूरा नहीं दिख रहा है, just a minute. Slides here. Fill. Just a minute, I'm trying. Okay. Is it clear now? Hello. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Now it's okay.
Now is full view. Okay. So if you see this, the US cold blast kills 21, hottest January in Australia. We have witnessed this hottest, January in Australia in 2019, and there was a forest fires, and there was a huge loss of biodiversity, flora and fauna. Particularly, kangaroo population was also affected in coastal areas. Why this, we the very biggest big fire in Australia we witnessed earlier. Now this basically also in this year in January 2019 cold, tens of millions of Americans braved this Arctic, like temperatures on Tuesday as low as minus 49 degrees Celsius that paralyzed the US that time, and many deaths were reported. And now we're coming to the climate, changing climate. Major focus is on the global mean temperature, rainfall, how will it be distributed, especially if you see the climatic erratic climate, climatic conditions, and because of the climatic changes, the erratic rainfall pattern we have witnessed in India also, the Mumbai flood, we have seen recently the Hyderabad flood. So how rainfall will be distributed spatially, with reason and seasonally also, pre-monsoon, monsoon, post-monsoon, and how it will behave. Did it come as the more intense, like it came into the in Hyderabad or in Mumbai, like situation our major cities, financial capital of India and Hyderabad, IT hub. These cities are facing a lot of problem. If we have already seen the Chennai flood, 3-4 years ago, how it gave the misery to the peoples, how the life was affected in Chennai. So is it likely to rapidly re-evaporate due to the higher temperatures and changes in winter storms or tropical cyclones? Because as India, we are having a more than 7,000 kilometers of coastal line, and this coastal line in India, 7,000 kilometer, starts from Kolkata to Surat, or in Kutch in Gujarat is 7,000 kilometers, and after US and Canada, India is the third largest country in the world which is having that much of coastal line. So this tropical cyclones, winter storm, tropical cyclones are very important for us, to basically to bear this climate changes related problems. And temperature, will there be more heat waves? We have already witnessed in India, in Rajasthan, in Haryana, in Punjab, the temperatures, periods of several days that are too hot or they are too cold or other extreme. I am telling you, even our winters, this summer vacations, basically Delhi, Punjab, and Haryana and Western UP and UP, you see this, summer vacations now. This generally started from May. You have to start in April if similar conditions come, because in the last week of April the temperature shoots up, more than 40 degrees Celsius or 45 degrees Celsius. So this will also affect your, the lifestyle also, and the socio-economic structure also, when the climate changes takes place. And the atmospheric aerosols, particularly the black carbon, are also very important. They play a major role in climatic changes. And atmospheric aerosols are small particles with sizes ranging from 10 nanometer to 10 micron, and they have atmospheric residence time of 1 week. They may be produced by both natural and anthropogenic processes, or a combination of both. And primary particles are directly injected into the atmosphere: dust, sea salt, and soot. And when you talk about the black carbon aerosols, atmosphere also, particularly the black carbon aerosols, if we spray 1 pinch of black carbon into the atmosphere, in the air, in the atmosphere, open atmosphere, it is equivalent to 10 black umbrellas in the atmosphere. The energy absorbed by the 10 black umbrellas is equal to the 1 pinch of, or 1 gram of black carbon, which is spread into the atmosphere. So you can see, when you burn the coal, when you burn the natural gas, when you burn the diesel, petrol, and all this black carbon, elemental carbon, which comes into the atmosphere, and this elemental carbon in the atmosphere, black carbon, is 800 times more potent than CO2. That means if you emitting this, uh, 800 times more potent. So this 1 kilo, but this is having a 800 times more effect than CO2 into the atmosphere. That means when you are emitting, if 1 ton of CO2 into the atmosphere, that means by the black carbon effect will be, there will be 800 tons of CO2 emitted into the atmosphere. Now secondary particles are also created by gas to particle conversion, conversion from precursor gases like SO2 to sulfate. And if you see this, this is a paper basically we published with my PhD student Tarun Bano. This variation in aerosol black carbon concentration and its emission estimates in the mega city of Delhi. We estimated, we published this paper in International Journal long back with the National Physical Laboratory, Delhi, CSIR. And now if you see the effect, what will be the effect of the extreme temperatures on the climate system? And you can see this, you can see here with my cursor. If you see, this is, suppose this is a previous climate, and this dotted lines are the previous climate and solid lines are the new climate. And you see the new climate in dotted climate. Now in dotted climate, the extreme events, this less cold weather was this less cold weather. And in this new climate, when the dotted lines become solid, you can see this yellow color, and you can see this red color, more record hot weather, and this is a more hot weather recorded. So there's a drastic change in the previous climate and new climate. If you see the probability of occurrence and the increase in the mean temperature. And you see similarly in the second slide, you can see this previous climate, the dotted lines, and you can see this solid lines in below. You see earlier, in earlier climate, the more, this was a, in earlier climate, you can see cold weather conditions were earlier climate, but this below dotted lines. But when the climate changes, more record of the cold weather with the solid lines, you can see the more hot weather, more extreme weather conditions will emerge in the days to come when temperature changes, when climate changes. And now if you see this, what will be the impact of this climate change on different parameters, like what will be the impact on health, what will be the impact on agriculture. And as the temperature changes, as you know, in Paris Agreement we say that we have to control this, the temperature of the, of the atmosphere, of the global temperature by 2 degree. But beyond this, what will happen, what will be the changes, the climatic change impact, potential climate change impact, and health impacts, weather related mortality will increase, infectious diseases may increase, malaria cases may increase, air quality, respiratory illness will also increase. And there is agriculture, particularly the impact on agriculture impact, the crop yield will decrease, and there will be more demand for the irrigation. Like if you take example of the Punjab, for a wheat crop, you require 40 days time, a minimum temperature from 15th December to this up to 30th, 31st of January, you require the minimum temperature. And when climatic changes take place, this minimum temperature from 40 days, this which is required, the cold temperature, the winter temperature for the wheat crop, this will be reduced from 40 days to, so already has reduced for several days. What it will reduce more, then what will happen, the milking in the field, the milking in the wheat grains will start reducing, and the weight of the wheat grain will also reduce, and there will be adverse impact on the production of wheat in North India, particularly Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP. So there will be drastic change, there will be drastic drop in the crop yields, and this crop yield, the decrease in crop yield, decrease in the wheat production will affect us badly in food security point of view. As we know, the farmers of Punjab, they're fighting for their rights in Delhi. Through their, I will not comment on this from any side, but Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP, the wheat is grown. Basically, the wheat is grown in this country, and surplus wheat is only grown in Western UP, Punjab, and Haryana, because other people grow their grains just for their own consumption. There is no surplus production. So basically, this also integrates the energy security, not only energy security of the country, but at the same time the food security of the country. Food security of the country is very important. And this at the same time, when the climatic changes, the more extreme condition, particularly from hot weather side, then more demand for irrigation will increase. You will require more water to lift, because the water table will go down, and you have to spend more energy on withdrawal of the water for irrigate your fields. And then there will be adverse impact, very adverse impact on the forest. And change in forest composition, already we have seen, because the hot temperatures, the climatic changes, the warm climate will increase more diseases, more vector-borne diseases, more malaria cases, more dengue cases, and others. And forest forest fire will also start increasing. They will increase in the forest fires. And when the forest fires will increase, that will be heavy loss, heavy toll on the flora, not only flora and fauna also. So our biodiversity will also decrease. So change in forest composition, shift in geographic range of forest, and forest health and productivity, this all will be badly impacted. And our water resources, of course, our water resources will come under stress, because with temperature rise, with temperature increase, with more global warming, more evaporation of water will take place. The melting of glaciers will become faster, and we will lose more the availability, the availability of water, in particular in the glacier-fed rivers, will be less. So water resource impact is change in water supply, change in water quality, and increased competition for water. Already, if you see our India as a nation, we have the 17% population of the world. 17% population of the world, that means every 6% on this planet is Indian. But we have only but we have only 3%, 3 to 4% of the land area of the world. And we have only 1% of the forest resource of the globe. Very less. So this is very important for us. And our freshwater availability. Freshwater availability in India, as if you compare with the population, is also very, very less. So there will be very adverse impact on the water resources and impacts on the coastal areas. Erosion of the beaches, particularly Goa beaches and Chennai beaches, and cost to defend coastal communities. When sea level rise will be there, then the sea water will enter inside the fertile land of our. So if you, as I told in the beginning, that 7,000 kilometer of area, we are having a 7,000 kilometer of 7,000 kilometer of that coastal boundary. And that 7,000 kilometer, if you see inside the 1 kilometer of the 7,000 kilometer, that boundary, the farmers are cultivating their land, and if the water enters inside because of the sea level rise, this all land will become saline. So this strip of 7,000 kilometers of land, you have to shift the farmers, you have to the cost to define the coastal communities, particularly who are involved in the who are engaged with the agricultural activity. Their productivity will decrease because the saline nature of soil, because saline intrusion of seawater inside the land. And species and natural areas, there will shift in ecological zones, there will loss of habitats, there will loss of habitats for flora and the fauna, or for these species. So there will be big loss for these communities, these species. And developed countries try to put blame on the developing countries, as you know, in terms of the population growth and poverty. And developing countries try to put blame for environmental degradation on developed countries, because of their biggest emitter of the greenhouse gases, and because of the affluence or energy intensive consumption patterns. If you see the Western countries, how much energy they consume, if you compare with the with the developing countries. So affluence or energy intensive consumption patterns, also it's blamed for the climatic changes. Now impacts of climate change, you see on the forest, we have discussed. The temperature rises 1.8 to 4 degrees Celsius. The biodiversity, particularly Sundarban deltas and Gulf of Mannar, which are the biodiversity hot spots in India, they will be affected badly. They like Sundarban deltas, they might sink also inside the ocean because of the sea level rise. And agriculture productivity, particularly in northern India, where the productivity for the wheat crop will decrease. As I told you in the beginning, that is also, this is a question for our energy security for India. And this coastal line area will be the place fish catch in the coastal area, and more events of adverse events, extreme events of cyclone, typhoons in the coastal area, and that will also affect the fisheries, this fisheries industry. And the coastal area, the basically very fragile ecology, very fragile ecosystem of coastal areas will be disturbed because of the climatic changes, climate uh, climate change. And there's some report recently which are very disturbing to us, that 1 million species risk extinction due to the human draft. United Nations report has said this. So this usually as per the uh, uh, some researcher, we need to recognize that climate change and loss of nature, climate change and loss of nature are equally important for us, not just for the environment, but as a development and economic issues as well. As it was said by the Robert Watson, chair of the United Nations mandated body that compiled the report on this risk of risk of extinction of the 1 million species due to the climatic changes. And this is a very serious issues we will face in the days to come. And the climatic change impact, run of Kutch, for India we are having a very hottest run of Kutch, sea level, there is sea level rise constant. That beautiful run of Kutch we will lost in the few decades if the same trend continue. We have already seen the Mumbai salt water intrusion, we have seen this salt water intrusion in Mumbai, and we have seen the productivity of forest in Kerala, particularly of the coconut productivity in Kerala is also start decreasing because of the climatic changes, because of the season behavior, uh, erratic rainfall, and Tamil Nadu because of the warm ocean water, the coral bleaching has started already there, and Ganges sedimentation problem is already there, because we that with the temperature rise, with the climatic changes, with the hot weather conditions, with the global warming, there will be more forest fire in the upper Himalayas. There will be less. The productivity of forest will decrease. When the productivity forest will decrease, that means the land in Himalayan area will be exposed. It will become barren and will be exposed to adverse conditions. It will be exposed to directly exposed to rain, and there will be sedimentation problem. And this sedimentation problem will affect our the our dams. This like this Tiri Development Corporation, which is built for more than 2,500 megawatt of power, that when the reservoir will be filled with the sedimentation, the power production from the reservoir will decrease, and these the capacity of the reservoir to hold the water will also decrease, because this all are interlinked with climatic changes, with more hot weather conditions, the more forest fire, less productivity of forest, more the basically the exposure of the barren land for the rainfall and extreme events, and more sedimentation. And more sedimentation means less reservoir capacity, less water holding capacity, less water head availability in the hydroelectric plant, less energy production, and this will affect a long way to us, and it will cost us billions of rupees. And Sundarban Delta sea level rise, I have seen the Sundarban Delta, very beautiful deltas in Sundarban. It's spread in around 900 square kilometer, and we have a biodiversity hottest spot in that area. Royal Bengal tiger, white Bengal tigers is a species here protected in that area. Many species of plants and animals are also protected in this Sundarban deltas. But if the same trend continue, that 50% of the island of Sundarban deltas will be submerged in the ocean, in the sea, in the next 50 years if things are not controlled in proper way. And Northwest India also, reduction in rice yield in in North India, there may be less productivity of wheat, but at the same time, reduction in rice yield because of the less availability of water is stress climate, and less availability of less rainfall in this. We have already seen the problems like Latu drought in a few years ago. How this problem was tackled. We have to supply. We supplied the water through trains to Latu, this uh, affected areas, drought affected areas. And this, we have already seen this in Kullu Valley in Himachal, has experienced a number of crop failures in the last 25 years. Even as per some reports, the Apple belt has already moved 30 kilometers northwards over the last 50 years because of in Kullu Valley the snowfall is decreasing, and snowfall is basically in the higher reaches only it is there. So the ice belt is shifted towards the north by 30 kilometers, and apple growers say poor production is due to the reduced in snowfall, and it's changing. Not only the snowfall is reduced over a time, but at the same time it's changed timing because it's not snowfall is not timely, it is not falling in time snow, and this is a change in times are also adversely affecting the apple production, particularly this horticulture business in Himachal Pradesh. If you go any Reliance Fresh or any store, now you will not find that much, the famous, Kullu or Manali Kullu, this apple or Kashmir apple. You will find the now a lot of import of apple is there. Apple is there because of the less snowfall uh, in these valleys. The quality of production of apple, the size of apple, the quality of apple production has decreased. The quality has also decreased, not only quality. And people are now buying. If you see the stores, lines of the stores, they see they are buying the imported apple. So this then you people will start buying the imported apple, then our production of apple will आपका जो our uh, Indian business, this internal business of apple production will also, this apple production will decrease. And you can see this here, the from this Kulu Valley to Manali area, how this area changes. And our rain-fed rivers, particularly Yamuna, Ganga, and other rivers which are rain-fed, and they are the lifeline for the country. Like if you see the Ganga River, when it's flow inside, this the Upper Ganga region, like in Gangetic Plain, like Punjab, Upper Gangetic Plain, Punjab, though Ganga doesn't flow from the Punjab, but Upper Gangetic Plain is known as a Gangetic Plain because earlier in the times it was this Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Bengal, this all Gangetic region, and Upper Gangetic Plain, then middle and lower. The around 40% population of India, out of this 130 crores or 100.3 billion people, this around 40% population lives in the this Gangetic region. And if the water availability in Ganga is a perennial river because it's not depending on the monsoon, but it's basically it's fed by the glaciers. So Himalayan source of the Ganga basically is dried up at a rate of 440 yards a year, nearly twice as fast as 20 years ago it was happening. And the dry summer months, the Gangotri glacier provides 70% of the water of the Ganga. So in dry summer months, 70% of the water comes from the Gangotri glacier. So if the glaciers are melted, the glaciers there are less snowfall, then what will happen that water availability in river Ganga will also decrease. And as per the UN climate report, the shrinking glaciers would pose threat to Asia's supply of fresh water. And Himalaya is known as the water tower of Asia. And this water tower Asia, because this will, this basically the perennial, which is very important. These perennial rivers, which are always the river which are snow fed or which are glacier fed, are all the best river considered because they do not easily come with floods, because monsoon rivers, they play havoc in the monsoon season, but in dry season, in monsoon season, they give they basically they make the floods, and they provide the adversary sorrows to the community. And when you need the water in summer, there is no water in the river. There is no water in the river. I was in Bihar 2 3 years ago. I saw there that the railway pool was 6 7 kilometer long, and I asked somebody 6 7 kilometer long pool this bridge, but there is no water inside in the river bed. So why do you have made this much of long the bridge? Then they said, sir, this is this season there is no water. There is bright river bed is completely dry. and there is a drop to drink in this water. There is no stream inside this river. But if you see, if you come to the monsoon, that much so much of water comes in this river that it looks like a simple sea. So, but these our rivers, this Yanga, Ganga, Yamuna, and other Brahmaputra, these rivers basically are perennial rivers because these rivers are snow fed, they are glacier fed, and they are flowing throughout the year, and that's why they are the lifeline for the country. So there is a warning. There is already a warning by the United Nations climate change report that sinking glacier would pose great threat to the Asia's water supply, not only for Asia but for India also, because Himalayan glaciers are they are the water tower of Asia. They supply water to India, to China, to Bhutan, to uh, Nepal, to Tibet. So this is very important. Now there comes in climate change and energy security. Why the energy security is important for us with the climate change? Because the basically these all climate changes, their energy is one of the important subject, a very important parameter which is causing the climatic changes, because 30% of the emissions over the globe, they come from the energy use. You use your bicycle, use your bike, motorcycle, or car, or tractor. Everywhere you use electricity house conditioners. Somewhere somebody is burning coal for you to generate the electricity. So now India's aspiration of the energy security or energy fronts are, and India's annual GDP growth projections are 8 to 9%. We don't know after post corona there will be what will be the GDP growth projections. And electricity generation requires into 2020 there will be around 1.85 trillion units, or 1850 billion units. And per capita electricity consumption in 2020 was 1200 kilowatt hour, and still it is well below world average of 2800 kilowatt hour. India has announced intent to reduce CO2 intensity. Paris Agreement. In Paris Agreement, we have already committed that India will reduce the energy intensity related CO2 emission by 35%. So there are multiple objects for the Indian energy scenario, Indian energy policy, that energy should be available to all. There should be access for all to the affordable electricity energy. There should be reliability of the energy of the electric subsidy supply. It should not be very costly. It should be low cost, and it should be low carbon. It means the electricity should not come all from the burning of the coal, but it should come from the renewable source like solar, wind, and other also low carbon. And we need the energy security, energy availability should be there. If you see the electric power, the current capacity is more than 3,50,000 megawatt, and this is the fifth largest electricity generation in the world. And per capita electricity generation consumption, India 1100 kilowatt hour, United States 14,000 kilowatt hour, and China 2,500 kilowatt hour, and world average is 2,800 kilowatt hour. And peak shortage is 15%, and 8 lakh megawatt in 2020, 2030 to 40, and 25,000 megawatt per year. We are facing a shortage. This 25,000 megawatt every year, the increased demand of electricity. And with climate concerns, India third largest emitter of CO2 after China and United States, and 38% of emissions in India, they're coming from power sector, and which power sector is basically depending on coal, on lignite, on hard coal, on fossil fuels. And their energy security concerns that 67% power from coal-based thermal power plants need to be depend on the imports of the coal. And if you see the energy resources available in India, what are the options for available for India? They are having a coal, very big reserves in India. Reserves are around 105 billion tons, and this 1 lakh 5,820 million tons, or 105 billion tons, and they can last for more than 70 years. And oil reserves capital cost is To install a plant of electricity for 1 megawatt, oil requires 2.8, 2.5 crores and coal requires 4.5 crores. And this, we are having a 1200 million tons of reserves for oil, and for gas there are 1 trillion cubic meter of gas reserves we have. And hydro, we have 148 gigawatt of hydroelectric electricity. And nuclear power, uh, capital cost is 8 to 13 crores per megawatt. And this basically the reserves of uranium are sufficient, and 40 years with uranium we can run the plant. Now, how to grow and be sustainable, basically, if you talk about the energy security and all that, how do we grow to 2000 billion kilowatt hour by like 1850, or this 2 trillion kilowatt hour, 2 trillion units of energy, electricity by 2022? And how do we get 3 billion kilowatt hour of low carbon power? And what are the fuel options for us and technologies available for us? Fuel options and technology available for us are for wind, for nuclear power, from solar energy, from hydro energy and biofuels, and carbon sequestration purposes, and hydrogen and fuel cells and hybrid cars. These are the future options for our energy use, and their investment, their research, their policies. And if you see this current installed capacity source wise, if you see in India, the coal, then there is lignite, there is gas, then diesel. Like for coal, you see, we are producing 1,91,000, more than 1,91,092 uh, megawatt of energy by the coal. We are producing by lignite, this 45,399 uh, megawatt of electricity, and from coal and diesel we are also producing. So this is basically the installed capacity by fuel wise. Then in renewable energy, wind power is also very important for us, very, because India is very leading country in the world to for the production of energy from the wind power. Now cost generation from the wind power is also reasonable, is around rupees 3 per unit per kilowatt hour. So this economic sensitive to wind, but it's economic sensitive to wind speed, but is very competitive. And India's potential basically is more than 3 lakh megawatt based on half height. And recent studies offer of the reassessed potential at 120 and 2% land use. Basically, we have 5 lakh megawatt potential on onshore, and 1 lakh 60,000 megawatt in the offshore, like only for Gujarat and Tamil Nadu coast areas. A lot of wind speed is there, we can harness that. So China is producing around 2,11,372 megawatt of electricity through wind, and USA around 96,000, Germany 59, and India is the fourth largest country in the world which is producing that much of 35 megawatt of electricity for electricity. This the wind energy is supplying for India is very huge share in the Indian energy economy. And the solar power is estimated potential for India is 7 lakh 50,000 megawatt. And so already in Jawaharlal Nehru National Mission, Solar Mission, in 2000 was launched 2,000 megawatt of grid connected solar power by 2022, which was revised by the Prime Minister then Modi by to 1 lakh gigawatt. This 1 lakh megawatt, 1 lakh megawatt of or 100 gigawatt by 2022, and the total installed capacity on February 2019 was 26,000 megawatts. And off-grid PV, the target is 10,000 megawatt by 2022, and installation of 27 lakh solar pumps for farmers and rural applications where grid is unviable or unreachable. And the challenges are intermittency of generation, the load management, high initial capital cost for investment, and requirement of the skilled personnel for this. And there is a this paper, basically solar energy, we published recently. This basically we did a Nobel climate classification criteria. This based on the performance of solar photovoltaic technology. If the solar photovoltaic technologies are adopted by India is for the renewable energy, uh, to meet the renewable energy their mission, then this classification will be helpful for us. And the electricity generation cost comparison, if you see, if you generate the electricity by coal, you have to spend this 2.5 rupees, it comes around 2.5 rupees per unit, and natural gas 3.9 rupees per unit, and diesel 10 rupees per unit. This hydro is the cheapest, one of the cheap option, 3.8 rupees per unit. And if you see, this wind energy is very cheap, 2.8 rupees per unit, and solar thermal 10 rupees per unit. And this solar photovoltaic, see, this very competitive, has come competitive market, and this is 2 rupees 65 paise, per unit solar PV. This is very competitive. You see, this 2 rupees 65 paise per unit, very competitive with the coal. This 2 rupees 55, 2 rupees 50 paise per unit. Then comes, but coal remains a major source of energy in India. Is a major source of energy in India, because coal, this black is beautiful for us, because we have 105 billion tons of reserves in India. 105 billion tons. That means more than 1 lakh million tons of reserves. That means this will last, uh, with current extraction rate, they will last for around 70-80 years. So black is beautiful, black is friend for us, because the Indian energy, basically energy sector, is reliable on the coal consumption. But of course the coal comes with a lot of liability, with lot of air pollution, health related issues. So we have to shift from the coal power generation to renewable energy like solar, wind, and others. But but coal is faithful friend for us, because if no other option is available, then we have plenty of coal to use in our economy. Then the demand side measures for smart grid. If you see, the Indian Institute of Science and Center for the Study of Science, Technology, and Policy, they say smart grid test bed in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore campus, and the consortium of technology provider companies and Ministry of Power under restructured accelerated power development and from program. That means this basically it will give you the basically there will be, it will give you the smart meters, and then their power thefts, the technical losses will be reduced by this demand side management. And then comes a blue this biofuels potential in India. And India's total land area, if you see, 328 millions of hectares, and cultivated is 142 million hectares. And this cultivable wasteland is, we are having 30 million hectare, and on which rice is grown on 40 millions of hectare, and wheat 26 millions of hectares. And it is not a good idea to divert this agricultural area, agricultural land, to give for the industry or to divert for the biofuels. So because the food security is already linked with this, and if entire wasteland used for growing the biofuels, this can produce 30 million tons of bio oil and 10% of oil demand by 2030. Ethanol production or ethanol opportunity is a good option. This is increased yield of sugarcane using drip irrigation and fertigation. Present average yield is around 80 tons per hectare, and this 80 tons per hectare, uh, then using this drip irrigation fertigation means, when irrigation you use the liquid fertilizer, can increase up to 150 tons per hectare. Sugarcane, using drip irrigation, you can increase the productivity of the sugarcane industry. And sweet sorghum, less water intensive crop than sugarcane, and two crops in a year you can take. Now this cellulosic ethanol from agro-based residues such as bagasse, rices, wood chips, crop residues, and technology needs to be developed for this. So if you see the solar energy and carbon dioxide is this cycle, biomass can be harvested, and biomass can, after harvesting biomass, this can be used for pre-processing plants. Then this cellulose can this go to the industry for the enzyme cellulose breakdown into the sugars, then sugars into the macrose fermentation, sugars into the other ethanol, then biofuels can be used for this transportation, and you can reduce the carbon dioxide from the this sector use. And this was the paper we published, this physical characterization and comparison of biofuel, biodiesel produced from edible and non-edible oils of Mahua indica, like Mahua, Pongamia pinnata, Scarange, and Sesame indicum, particularly till plant oil seeds. And this was published in this was my article. Shipra Gautam, NC Gupta, and DK Sharma. DK Sharma is professor in IIT Delhi, and Shipra Gautam is working with the Reliance refinery. This my student working Reliance refinery in a is a scientist. So this paper we published biomass conversion biorefinery journal. And this comes basically the bioethanol. Basically this bioethanol is a uh, can we convert this bioethanol uh, into the this corn or maize can be converted into the this ethanol. Is it feasible? It is advisable to convert this when billions of people are hungry in the country, they are not getting the proper food. Then we convert this. Is it ethical to convert the maize, the corn, the barley, uh, or other edible crops produce the produce the bioethanol or biofuels or ethanol? uh, this cartoon can depict this the sorry state of affairs. This picture can depict this. Is it ethical to, when the millions of people are hungry on this planet, and we convert the for luxury the edible crops, like maize or corn, or barley, or other edible crops, or sorghum, other edible crops, into the production of ethanol? So this is a very the cartoon depicts this. Now, what can the 1 hectare can do if you the energy option? You want to produce the biofuels by sugar, or you want to produce the biofuel by corn ethanol, or you want to produce the the biofuel by jadrofa, or by the sweet sorghum, or the fuel by option 5 is by solar energy. So if you see the sugarcane, 80 tons of sugarcane can produce sugar juice, sugarcane juice, to make ethanol. 6,000 liter per hectare. You can produce the 6,000 liter per hectare. This ethanol you can produce by sugarcane. And if you want to produce the ethanol, which is mixed in the petrol, or petrol, by using this corn or maize, then corn yield is 7,500 kg per hectare, and ethanol 2,800 liter per hectare you can produce. And if you want to produce from jatropha, then you can see this will be 1.5 ton to per hectare, which is also very less, because this is 6 ton or 6,000 liter, or 6 ton per hectare. So this sweet sorghum, if you see, this basically 30-50 tons per hectare you can grow, and juice extraction 50%, then ethanol can be 25 to 3,500 liters per hectare, but it's just half of the sugarcane production ethanol. And solar daily average radiation are available on the earth, and 50% of the year can covered by the this 10% with 10% efficiency, how much you can produce. So if you see here, the ethanol production from sugarcane is very very viable, because it's just double of that sweet sorghum. So if you see this sugarcane production, uh, Sugar is a very important crop, particularly Western UP and in surrounding Delhi areas. You can produce the sugar, you can produce the molasses, and spent cane bagasse you can use for paper making, for other item making. You can use this, and this bagasse, this molasses can be used for the after fermentation as a ethanol, for the substitute of petrol. So because nothing is wasted, not even sugar cane, spent sugar cane is used. It's all valuable. Sugar cane juice is valuable, and this all sludge which comes out from the sugar can be converted into ethanol, like a molasses. So nothing is wasted. Everything is used in this sugarcane industry. And potential R&D domains, there are new and affordable materials for the photovoltaic uh, technology, in particularly on the solar energy front, and there are clean technologies available for the carbon capture and sequestration of CO2 into the atmosphere. There is low speed wind power available, which can generate more power. There is cellulosic ethanol. Uh, then the efficient and affordable hybrids and electric vehicles. Then energy storage, efficient batteries and condensers available. Demand side management of power is there, and trained human resource for this in this sector. And the alternative to fuel for the energy sector, if you want to save on emissions, if you want to emit less emissions, if you want to increase the social uh, benefits and as a social capital, this alternative to fuel is basically human power. This is a picture from Denmark. You see the how people are to the market. They're not coming by car. You cannot find a single car here around by nearby, but all bicycles. So this, like in Denmark, you cannot take a car in a public places, and car uh, is not promoted there, but people use bicycles. So this alternative to fuel is basically human power. It will also keep you healthy, but at the same time you will also spend less money, and you will not spend on the purchase of vehicles, but at the same time you can save on the emission, you will save the CO2, and you will save the climate change. So this human power can do this. Now if you see this, the fossil fuel energy ratio, energy delivered to the customer, and in fossil energy used by uh, this fossil production. So fossil energy ratio is basically for this cellulosic ethanol biorefinery production is, if you spend only 1 unit of fossil fuel, you get this 10 units of this energy. And you spend in if you corn ethanol, you spend 1 unit of energy, you will only get 1.36 units of the energy. And you gasoline, you use 1 unit of energy using fossil fuels, you get only 0.81% of the the gasoline energy. So this is less than that. And for electricity, if you use 100 calories of energy you use by coal burning, you get only 45 calories of energy as electricity. So only 45% efficiency is there for electricity. This one we want to depict here. And then you can ask, what are the India's uh, initiatives in this field? India has a national action plan on climate change. We already have a very big national action plan on climate change. We have a national solar mission. We have a target of producing 100 gigawatt or 1 lakh megawatt of electricity by solar power. And Prime Minister is already this is promoting this solar energy to achieve the goal of 100 gigawatt by 2022. And at the same time, this we are also in wind energy, like 60,000 megawatt of energy to exploit by 2022, and 15 gigawatt of, or 15,000 megawatt of energy from this energy from biomass based generation. And the national mission for enhanced energy efficiency, we should enhance the energy efficiency of our equipments, of our gadgets, like already in air conditioners. I told you that earlier we were having air conditioner simple 2 star, then 5 star AC came, then now inverted AC. So they are using less than one fourth of the energy you were using earlier with old technology in conditioner. So enhanced energy efficiency can also save a lot of this CO2 emission on this front. And then national mission on sustainable habitat, because India is very rich in biodiversity, so we have to protect our habitats for sustainable habitat, because with the climatic changes, their habitats may be lost. And their national water mission, because with the climatic changes, the national water mission will be affected, water availability will be less, erratic rainfall, erratic monsoon. So we have to focus on this national water mission program and national mission for sustaining the Himalayan ecosystem. How the Himalayan ecosystem will sustain, because we have to do the lot of activity in the Himalayan region to sustain, make it the sustainable, uh, the Himalayan ecosystem. And national mission for the green India, then plantation, planting more trees, more. We have to increase our forest cover, because we are already low in forest cover, though we are increasing it. In the last few decades is already increased, but not we have not reached that much of 33% of the forest cover, which is mandatory for a country. And the national mission on climate change and sustainable agriculture. Then in sustainable agriculture, national mission for the crops basically which require less water should be grown in the those areas where those areas which are water stressed, or they get very little or less rainfall. And this national mission for sustainable agriculture is also very, important, because the farmers basically should grow those crops, those which are very sustainably used, may require less energy inputs and high output. And this national mission on climate change is also a part of these missions. Now, if you see here, we need that tree to protect us. This tree protect us. Somebody's, you can see here, uh, social justice raises more difficult issues. This man is in need of wood and is cutting trees, but affluent persons who are emitting several times more than the poor person emissions into the atmosphere by their luxury lifestyle. They are giving, they are preaching the we need that tree to protect us from the greenhouse gas effect. So they are protecting not to cut the tree. So this social justice also very important. Social justice raises more difficult issues at the same time. And you see how we can solve this, the global warming problem. uh, you can depict from this, slide, what we can do for solving the problem of climate change, solving the problem of global warming. uh, we have to basically, the most important is we have to eat less meat, because this meat basically is also important for the methane production, too much methane production. And we should also, we can buy the, after the planting of it, we can buy the this CO2 credits. And you can, we can go for the energy audit for the, to save power, to save money. And this travel can also be reduced. We can go by road travel, or less, air travel we have to use to arrest the climate. Then there's a carpool we can do in our offices. When we are going from our office, we should keep the our this system of cars completely uh, uh, intact to reduce the emissions, but particularly the air in tires, and keep full, this every week check. And we should use the public transport. We should avoid the personal transport if it is available. And we can switch to the green power, like particularly we can switch to the solar power rather than we are using the coal based thermal power in our day-to-day life. So change to energy efficient lights. We have to bulbs. We can replace our, gadgets in house with more efficient and more efficient uh, these gadgets to control these climatic changes. And choose energy efficient ones, energy efficient equipments, energy efficient equipments to consume less energy, less electricity, less emissions, or such appliances like five-star rating or other very efficient equipment we should use to reduce the emissions of CO2 emissions or emissions based on this fossil fuel utilization. And we can like our clothes to dry in sun, and we should also use the photovoltaic panels for lighting heavy. So now the warm water we can draw from the solar heater instead of burning the basically electricity, using electricity in our home heaters. So, and well insulated houses to reduce for the, particularly for the air conditioning, uh, can reduce the consumption of energy many times. And this is basically how on this earth do we turn it off, can we turn it off, or we are there, uh, we can control the climate. You can control the climate change by these habits which we have discussed. So this was my basically is the last slide for this energy, climate change and energy security. And ultimately we come to this, this uh, Mahatma Gandhi saying that a technological society has two choices. The first choice is it can wait until the catastrophe happens or this failure expose systemic deficiency, distortion, and self-deceptions. And second, a culture can provide social checks and balances to correct for systemic distortion prior to catastrophic failures. And in the ultimately the last, if you see this, speed is not relevant. Speed is irrelevant if you are moving in the wrong direction. So we talk about the speed, but we are moving in the wrong direction. Then there is no meaning. Basically, if your meaning is that if you are doing the development on the cost of biodiversity, on the cost of flora, fauna, the animal species, critical species, you are on the basically on the we compromise with this with development, then it's not a development in positive direction, it's a negative direction. So uh, speed is not relevant. Your speed may be slow, your speed may be with pace, but if you are moving in the right direction, that only you can achieve the goals of sustainable society. You can achieve the goals of sustainable water management. You can achieve the goals of sustainable energy for all. You can achieve the goal for energy sustainable and affordable energy, affordable water, and for all, and clean quality air which everybody require in this basically in the northern region of India, in this North India, particularly there's a havoc with air pollution. There's a lot of spike in air pollution that reaches to the dangerous levels in Delhi, Punjab, Haryana, Western UP. So if you see the cost benefit analysis, how much benefit we are getting and how much money we are spending because of the byproduct as air pollution, how much money we are spending on this, then you will find that this all developments will come into the negative. So this speed is irrelevant if you are moving into the wrong direction. It was said long back by the Mahatma Gandhi. uh, in the last I would like to say some from Hindi quote, that is देश की मिट्टी और देश के जल, देश की मिट्टी और देश के जल, देश की वायु और देश के फल, सब सरस बने, सब सरस बने. देश की मिट्टी और देश के जल, the water resources of the country, the soil resources of the country, देश की वायु, the air quality of the country, देश की मिट्टी और देश के जल, देश की वायु और देश के फल, the fruits of the country सब सरस बने, सब सरस, they should be sweet and they should be sweet. And देश के तन और देश के मन, देश के घर और देश के घाट, the house घाट means the river bank, इस देश के घर, देश के घाट सब बिमल बने, सब बिमल बने. Because the highways and river banks, they should be the state in the state direction. These basically sayings were from the quoting, I am quoting from the Rabindranath Tagore. That देश में घर में भाई बहन सब बिमल बने, सब बिमल बने. So these few lines of by Tagore, which are translated into Hindi by somebody which I am quoting, they in these lines, it has been depicted all. They have depicted all the complete, the sustainability issues we are facing in this society today. So with this all, I close my talk here on the climate change and energy security issues and challenges for India. So, hello. Yes. With this all, I conclude my talk here.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for very informative and knowledgeable lecture. Participant, if you have any query, please ask.
Sure, I welcome the participant. If they have any query, if they have any question, I will be happy to respond, to answer.
Participants, if you have any query, please ask, or you can also write in the chat box.
I think they all are knowledgeable persons.
One question is there.
Faculty. Yes.
From Ruchi A. Patil. Sir, I would like to know the impact of climate change on the groundwater resources.
Yes, see, the impact of climate change on the groundwater resources will be very adverse, very negative. As the temperature will rise, the requirement of water will increase. The requirement of water will increase for the central air conditioning. The requirement of water will be increased for the thirsty crops. Will the temperature rise with the climatic change? Temperature rise with climate change. The availability of moisture, in soil will decrease, and the groundwater table will go down, and you have to spend more and more energy to draw water from deeper beels, from deeper wells. So it is basically there all are the groundwater and this climate change. They are inversely proportional. They are inversely proportional, so there will be adverse impact. The more the temperature rise, the more global warming, the more consumption of water, and there is a more depletion of the groundwater resources. And this is happening in Punjab also, because you have very less forest cover, and you draw the water from the groundwater. You draw by using electricity, and every each year your groundwater, the depletion is there. It's going down and down, and you have to spend the more energy you have to spend more energy to draw the similar amount of water when water table sinks due to climatic changes. Yes.
Yes, any other query, please? Participants, if you have any other query, please ask, or you can also write in the chat box. So one more question in the chat box. Or I might say one more addition to that, does it have a relationship with soil pollution and groundwater recharge?
Pardon?
Sir, in the chat box, please, you can also read.
I think I am not able to see this chat box. You just tell me the question, then I will answer.
Okay, sir. I am reading. Along with the first part which Ruchi A. Patil has asked, sir, one more addition to that, does it have a relationship with the soil pollution and groundwater recharge?
Yes, see, at the same time, you see, when the moisture availability in the ground is less because of the climatic changes, moisture availability is less. That means, the basically water dilutes the pollution. Even in soil pollution is there, when the water availability is more, then the pollutants will be diluted. So if there is a, already the water is stressed, environment, the pollution will be more. Of course, it will affect the soil pollution also, because water is also such a thing which can also, can dilute the pollutants which are available in the soil.
Okay, yes, Dr. Shweta, you can ask. Dr. Shweta, you have raised your hand. Please ask.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Afternoon, sir.
You are welcome, Shweta. Please ask.
Sir, I was just appreciating your lecture. Your lecture was very good, and we feel that we should conserve our natural things, and it was a very motivating lecture.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, any other query, please?
You are welcome. Participants, you are welcome.
So, thank you so much, sir, for sparing your valuable time and for sharing your best knowledge on very important topics with all of us. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, Engineer Surita Kotwal, for all the this time you spared. I spared for this giving me the opportunity to speak to the participants. And once again, I thank Professor this Manjeet and Engineer Sukhdeep for inviting me and for giving me this opportunity to interact with this knowledgeable August gathering of participants from several colleges of Punjab. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So thanks to all the participants too for patience hearing. That's all for today. We will meet tomorrow at 9:15 a.m. Thank you so much.
Okay, have a nice day.
Thank you, sir. Same to you.
Okay, bye bye.